Hello, it is currently 5:36 in the UK in the morning, and I'm up because I haven't been sleeping that well as of last night. I went to bed quite early, so it was annoying waking up early, but I'm up now, so I might as well do something. Even though I'm tired, I have my latte in my Matilda mug, and I have some toasted cinnamon and raisin bagel slices. So, I can't be that moody. So I wanted to come in and talk about The Gathering by Anne Enright, which I find really boring. This won the Man Booker in 2007. Yeah, I didn't like this book, which surprised me because I was really looking forward to it. Anne Enright's a writer I really admire. The Green Road is the only other novel I've read by her. But The Green Road I really, really liked. I thought it was funny. It was kind of similar to this because someone dies in the Green Road, like the mother dies, and then all the other kids who've grown up are brought back to the Green Road where they grew up. So, but I thought the Green Road was done really well, but this one I found it really, really dull. But she wrote the Green Road after this one, so I've read them in the opposite order from the way they were written. So yeah, I thought I'd just come in and sound off on this. So this one, I don't think so. It's narrated by this woman, and I think she's like middle aged, has two kids and a husband, and then her. I think does she care for her stepmother Ada, something like that. She cares for some old lady, but her brother Liam, he's dead. So that's why it's called The Gathering because all of her there's nine siblings, but there's eight of them left now. They're all gathering to for the funeral, so that's why it's called The Gathering. And she's an Irish author, so it's set in Ireland. I like that it was set in Ireland, but the brother dies in Brighton. But I was expecting this to be quite, I like sad books generally. I like miserable books. I like emotional books that are emotionally hard hitting. I love all that. But this book, I just didn't find it emotionally hard hitting at all, which is disappointing to me. It's meant to be really hard hitting and like, oh my gosh, death, family, love, all those important things. But I find it really dull. I didn't think any of the characters were particularly memorable. So maybe like when it came out at the time, is she unreliable? I mean, she's kind of slightly unreliable. I don't think you get the woman's name, which I think is meant to create a kind of mystique about her, as if she's interesting because she's nameless. But I found her really boring, so I was like, no wonder she doesn't have a name because she's so boring. People probably don't even notice her and don't even call her a name. But I mean, a character can seem like people aren't interested in them and still be interesting because it's told from her perspective. But I just found her perspective really boring because she seemed to barely take any responsibility for her own life and her own actions and non-actions. She just seemed to present herself as a kind of passive victim, which I find annoying. But I mean, if someone's a victim, they're a victim. But really, by the end of it, I was like, what are you a victim of, really, woman who's narrating this? So she's moaning. She basically spends like 200, how long is it? 260 pages moaning. So the plot is very simple. When it opens, you know the brothers died, and then they're all grown up and the brothers died, and it's basically the in between stage where someone's died and then they're waiting to have the funeral. So the actual funeral is at the climax of the book near the end. So that's simple, that's good. But like the more I found out about the story, the more I was just like, you're a really boring narrator. Like I don't see why your perspective should be the one to tell the story. Like your brother who died seems way more interesting personally. And if I'm meant to be feeling sympathetic for anyone, it seems to be like I should be feeling bad for him, really. Um, so it really is surprising that this won the Man Booker to me because, I mean, I don't really know what other novels were in the long list or short list that year, but this doesn't feel like a winner to me. It feels like a shortlisted one. One of the ones that makes it, and it's it has some good aspects, but it's not really that great. But so maybe that year the Man Booker judge just wanted like an easy book to win. Book is quite quiet, but a lot of the subject matter the book sheds some light on is actually quite loud subject matter. So when it was quiet, I was like, I don't think it's meant to be quiet. It's meant to be quite loud talking about these issues, I think. But generally, like the prose, I found Anne Enright's prose good. So the writing was stellar. The writing was fine. But I just found that the themes were okay. Like it was all done. Nothing was really out of place. But to me, it just didn't seem to have like the oomph to make it come together. To me, the themes weren't really explored in a huge amount of depth where they all like come together and I notice the connections between them and I'm like, oh my god, this book is just phenomenally put together. I didn't get that vibe from it. I got the vibe that this probably could have been like a 50-page short story and been like a really, really good short story where it moves, like it can move like leisurely, but it's moving at a good pace and everything's done because I'm like, why does it need to be 260 pages between him dying and the funeral? Nothing really happens in that time for it to warrant that much exploration. The woman who's narrating it, she's just kind of flopping about and being like, oh, I need to go down to Brighton because that's where he died. Basically, the brother Liam killed himself. That's quite a hard subject matter. So he kills himself and then they have to bring his body back to like Ireland and they're having the funeral. So she has 2 daughters who I think are around like 10 years old. And she has a husband. But all she does is moan. I mean, she doesn't moan about the kids that much. But I think it's more like she enjoys having kids because it's just something for her to do. So you get the sense that she's quite a depressed woman, which, I mean, a lot of my favourite books are actually told by depressed women. So really, I should have loved this book. But I find her really, really boring. Like, people have said that the novel's kind of meant to be like witty, original, inventive, it says. But I didn't find it particularly witty. And there've been books about, funerals in Ireland before, like Finnegan's Wake. Lots of books about the atrocities in Ireland, so it's not really original. I guess maybe the sense of an unreliable woman narrator, it's a little bit nuanced. But now I think that is such a common thing. So I think maybe after this won the Man Booker in 2007, that an unreliable woman narrator wasn't that huge a thing, especially in Irish literature. But now I think an unreliable woman narrator is like by the by in contemporary fiction. So I think maybe that's why the book hasn't aged that well, because now the way it was told might have seemed really interesting at the time, but now it just seems really boring to me. Sorry. I've read novels where not that much happens and the pacing isn't, it's not quick. I've loved the writing, but I found that her writing her writing was good, but it just wasn't enough to warrant all the philandering about that the woman does. And I think what annoyed me with the woman is that she's just so kind of passive in her life, which I think because she's, a mother, I don't think she works. So I think because she's a mother and she's in the house and she's, depressed because her brother's died, it's kind of like, I guess she's organising the funeral and stuff, but she doesn't really have that much to do. And Irish housewives are kind of, domesticated, and people would generally think that they're seen as passive. So I kind of got that aspect, but I didn't think it was really explored in that much depth. But the book did have some things to say. Like, I got the sense that the whole funeral was meant to have a ritualistic aspect, and it's kind of meant to be like all the young men that have died because of the troubles in Ireland, that Liam is somehow tied into that. But really, as a character, apart from being Irish, he really has no ties to that at all. He doesn't have any scarring because of the troubles. He kills himself for completely different reasons. But one of the things that the book does touch on is child molestation. So there's a bit where the woman narrator as a child, she remembers seeing Liam as a child being fondled or something by a priest, I think it is. So I got that the book was meant to be shedding light on that because Catholic priests are kind of infamous for that. But I didn't think the book was really talking about it in any depth. Like, when she sees it as a child, she doesn't do anything. She just runs away, and she never asks Liam about it. She never says anything. Like, she sees how his life's going to shit, and she doesn't say anything about it. She never talks about it with anyone. So I got the sense, of repression in the novel, but it didn't seem like the narrator was that aware of the repression, which is why I found her perspective annoying, because why should I bother listening to you? I might as well listen to Liam being like, I don't know why she never said anything if she saw, because she doesn't have any more insight than he would have had. But I'm guessing the fact that, she doesn't talk about it is kind of like, society doesn't talk about it, Ireland don't want to talk about that. So that was okay, but it just wasn't done in that much depth. I guess I meant to feel sorry for him that he kills himself, but I didn't, which I feel bad about, because I should care that this character died when I don't care. Like, he didn't really have that many character traits, except that he's meant to be like, when he's 15, Liam was meant to be this beautiful boy, which people have said that's nuanced, but that young boys are fetishized and made out to be really, really beautiful. I'm like, that isn't really original. That's been done to death. So being beautiful is not a character trait. Also, drinking features a lot in the book, which is fine. Like, it's Irish, so that's kind of a cliche to be expected in Irish fiction. So yeah, I was quite disappointed with this. I just found the pacing really slow. I was like, it doesn't need to be this slow. Come on, pick it up, pick it up. Between like pages like 1 and 100, I was really enjoying the writing. I was like, okay, the pacing is like slow and leisurely. I'm enjoying it. But by page like 160, I was like, this still isn't really going anywhere. The lack of character development I was finding boring, because the plot isn't really going anywhere. The characters aren't really going anywhere. Boring. Right, and let's look at the cover. As boring and miserable as you would expect the novel to be. I don't know why I expected the book to be so much better than I thought it would be, but a lot of the times with like miserable perspectives, they do covers like that, so that's why the cover didn't put me off, because I was like, they probably just didn't give it that great a cover. But really, the cover is kind of befitting the book, because the sepia is, childhood nostalgia and loss and time and death, probably. And then the blue is, he's Irish, so he probably has blue eyes. It's meant to be a beautiful boy, so that's Liam. But it looks very misery memoir-ish, so really, I don't like the cover that much. It's boring, but I guess it suits the book. So yeah, Liam dies, and I think by the sense of the novel, you're meant to get a sense of something being buried, at least. But I didn't really get the sense that anything was really buried. Like, nothing was really talked about in a huge amount of depth. She just talks about her kind of growing up, her family duties and responsibilities, her life as a wife and mother, I guess enjoying herself when she's drunk. And the point that I really started getting annoyed with the book was because her brother dies, and then because she's depressed, she doesn't want to have sex with her husband. But her husband, Tom, she goes on about how lovely he is all the time, and he does seem like a nice enough guy. There's one bit where she's talking about sex being, annihilating, which I liked. But even having sex, she's like a really passive person, which, you can be submissive, but submissive doesn't necessarily mean passive. She's not submissive or anything. She's just passive. She's just like, oh, just take me if you want me. I don't care that much. She's very nonplussed. So my husband, wants to have sex, and then she's like, oh, fine. And then basically after they have sex, she makes out like he basically I don't know if it's rape, but she makes out like he sexually assaulted her. But I got the sense that she kind of makes out to the reader like her husband rapes her, but I don't think he does rape her. Like, you didn't really do anything different than normal. Like, you didn't really, but it's not like she was like, no, and then he forced himself. She kind of makes out like she never gives consent, or that she's just like, yeah, whatever, let's have sex. Like, so it's not necessarily that she didn't give consent, but she never said no. She wasn't like, I don't want to. I guess maybe you're meant to think that he should just read her body language, but it's made out like she's always like that. So I'm like, why should he know any different? And then she kind of turns on him afterwards and is like, I hate you. You're vile. Like, you're a pig, kind of. And then he's like, what the fuck? Like, what is wrong with you? So I guess maybe it's meant to be the idea that sex and death, are very related, and she doesn't want to have sex because she doesn't know how to cope with death. The idea that her brother's dead. And she's kind of taking it out on her husband because he's like the main male figure in her life. So I could kind of understand that. But I was like, she needs to have some insight. Like, she needs to be like, I feel so guilty for what happened with Tom. Or, actually, I liked the way he was having sex with me. Or even, like, that would have been more interesting to me. But I mean, her just being like, I'm a victim of my husband raping me. But I was like, but I don't think he really did rape you. Just talk to your husband about it. Talk to him. Be like, look, I don't want to have sex. Or look and say, the sex we had last night, like, I really didn't like that. I'm going through a really shit time. Liam's dead. Like, can we just not have sex, please? Talk to your husband about it. Like, you're a grown woman. Like, you can't expect him to be a mind reader. So that I found kind of annoying. But I feel like that's not what I should be taking away. I should be like, oh my gosh, yes, lady narrating this. You know, I do feel really sorry for you. That's so bad that your husband wants to have sex with you. But I'm like, you should, you know, you're an adult. Like, you have responsibility for yourself as well. Like, he's a loving partner. You should be able to say, I don't feel like having sex, and that's perfectly fine. And then if he's like pressuring you, that's awful. Like, he needs to fucking stop it. But you made it like you didn't care either way, and then afterwards you're crying victim. So that kind of annoyed me a bit. So I think it was meant to be talking about the repression in Ireland, but I didn't find it compelling. I also didn't find Liam's death compelling. He doesn't seem like that brilliant a character. Like, he says that, you know, it's not the big things that got him down in life. It was all the little things that got him down in life. Child molestation is a pretty huge thing. But I got the sense, but she never talked to him about it. Like, she never said anything to anyone about it. So maybe she's meant to feel guilty about that, but you can't be bothered to mess with your brother because his life's a mess. But I'm like, maybe you kind of know why his life's a mess. You know he hasn't ever told anyone, as far as you know. You should have said something. Like, but she doesn't make it like, I wish I'd said something to him. She's just like, I never did say anything. And that's just what it was. So when he kills himself, I'm kind of like, well, I'm not really that surprised he did kill himself because you've hardly been a great sister, have you? His life has been pretty bad. Like, he hasn't made a great life for himself, but if you have a horrible childhood like he did, shit probably is going to go down in your life when you're an adult as well. So I got the sense that she's kind of so boring and vapid as a character that if she was my sister and that had happened to me as a child, I probably would be suicidal as well because she was just so boring. I wouldn't want to have her in my life. And I definitely wouldn't want her telling my story if I was Liam. So yeah, I didn't like this book that much, unfortunately. But I do really like Anne Enright as a writer. So I love The Green Road, and I still love The Green Road. And I'm really excited for Actress. So, sorry Anne, didn't like this book. What else have I been doing? So I have been reading Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. I read that in the last 2 days, so I read that quite quickly. And now I'm on to my first Ian McEwan. So I'm really excited for that. This story is meant to be quite sad as well, but it's short and it's meant to be really good writing and it's meant to have a plot as well. So I'm excited for my first Ian McEwan. So have you read any Ian McEwan? If you have, what do you think? And have you read any Anne Enright? What do you think? All right, bye.